Hi, everybody. Welcome to English Digest. I'm Tom.
Hi, I'm Stephanie.
It's our News Digest unit for today. It's also an all-English lecture or an all-English unit. And today we're going to be talking about the topic of surrogacy, which means women have babies for other people. She doesn't have the baby for herself. For whatever reason, she has it for somebody else, and then they adopt the child and raise the child as their own.
Yeah, it's a global debate. You know, depending on the country you live in, you might have different policies and laws and regulations. We're going to talk about some of the ethics behind this idea, the risks, the profits, why some people believe it's not a good idea, and while others really champion this idea, they support it, they push it forward because they're incapable of having their own biological children. As we always do, we're going to read through our article one time and then we'll be back. Global debate on surrogacy, ethics, risks, and profits. A recent controversy erupted across Taiwan social media when a gay couple shared their surrogacy journey in the U.S. Their comments, describing how they chose the most beautiful and tallest Russian woman to carry their child, provoked public outrage. Many criticized them for treating the surrogate mother as nothing more than a tool. This incident highlights the complexity surrounding surrogacy practices worldwide. Surrogacy involves a woman agreeing to carry and deliver a baby for another person or a couple. Supporters argue that it represents reproductive autonomy and personal freedom. For infertile individuals and couples, single people, and same-sex partners, surrogacy offers a precious chance to have biological children they otherwise couldn't. Some also view commercial surrogacy as a win-win situation, in which women are financially compensated for voluntary participation and are covered by clear legal protections. However, critics raise significant concerns about exploitation. The substantial costs of surrogacy typically limit access to wealthy clients, which transfers health risks associated with pregnancy to economically vulnerable women. Furthermore, with in vitro fertilization success rates hovering around just 17%, surrogates are left to shoulder the considerable risks of miscarriage and other medical complications. India, once a popular surrogacy destination, banned commercial surrogacy in 2021, following reports of surrogate mothers dying under exploitative conditions. Beyond concerns about bodily autonomy, opponents argue that treating childbearing as a business raises ethical questions about turning women's bodies and children into commodities. Different nations have approached surrogacy from varied perspectives. France and Germany prohibit the practice, deeming it harmful to women's dignity. In contrast, the UK permits only altruistic surrogacy, framing it as a gift between women. Meanwhile, Russia, Ukraine, and certain U.S. states allow commercial surrogacy, viewing it as an expression of female independence. Such conflicting stances make surrogacy a highly controversial issue that requires careful consideration across cultural, legal, and moral dimensions.
Okay, everybody, let's get to it. Let's talk about the contents of today's lesson. The title is Global Debate on Surrogacy, Ethics, Risks, and Profits. So we have this global debate. People are debating this issue all over the world, and it's on surrogacy. It's concerning surrogacy, and it involves ethics, what is right, what is wrong, the risks, is it dangerous, is it safe, and the profits. Can you make a lot of money, or will you go poor? Now here, surrogacy just means someone is substituting for something. When I see the word surrogacy, I almost always think of what we're going to talk about today, a woman having a baby for somebody else. But it could be used in different situations if you're talking about a substitute.
So a woman carries and gives birth to a baby for another person or a couple. And oftentimes the couple is actually giving that woman their own biological DNA. They give that woman an egg, and then it's implanted in the woman who is their surrogate. who is carrying that baby, delivers that baby, and then just hands that baby over to the couple that she has an agreement with. It's an arrangement. It's usually a contract. It has to be a legal contract. Sometimes this happens illegally, and that's what we want to avoid at all costs, because sometimes very poor women are taken advantage of and used as sort of a tool for wealthy people to have their own baby.
Indeed. So, of course, it can be debated as to whether it's right or wrong to do this. And the reason we're talking about this is because something happened in Taiwan recently that sort of inspired this debate. So here in the first paragraph, it says, a recent controversy erupted across Taiwan's social media when a gay couple shared their surrogacy journey in the U.S. Now, my daughter told me about this some time ago. I misunderstood the country that the woman was coming from. I thought she said Ukraine, but it actually turns out to be someone from Russia. And this controversy erupted recently. To erupt, that word is usually used to talk about volcanoes, okay? Volcanoes erupt all the time in different parts of the world. But here, if something explodes or becomes controversial rather quickly or becomes well-known rather quickly, we can use this verb to erupt. And erupted is the past tense.
Maybe you have a boss that has a bad temper and he just erupted one day and started screaming at everybody. So you can use this word if something just bursts out suddenly or explodes. It feels like an explosion sometimes. This was a controversy that erupted. A lot of people were talking about it across Taiwan's social media. They must have gotten online, this couple, and posted about their experience. They had to go to the U.S. to do it, and that's where we find out about this. So online, you can read about a lot of people's personal experiences. Their comments describing how they chose the, quote, most beautiful and tallest Russian woman to carry their child provoked public outrage. This must have been a male gay couple because they wanted to pick somebody whose eggs were different than the sperm they had. So she obviously was taller, probably taller than they were. Very beautiful. I think a lot of those Eastern European women are beautiful. We have a lot of Eastern European women here in Taiwan as models. They're working as models. They're young girls, and they're quite beautiful. They're very tall. And they picked, you can pick. If you go into the surrogacy program, you usually choose who you want to mother your child, to deliver that baby. And this was their own description of the woman they chose.
I wanted to say that the word gay usually refers to men who are homosexuals. If we're talking about women who are homosexuals, we tend to say the word lesbian. But technically, the word gay does apply to both.
It does, yeah.
Okay. But here it's a gay couple, two men who are married, and they want to have a kid. So they went to the USA to figure out what to do about this situation. And their comments on social media was describing how they chose the most beautiful and tallest Russian woman to carry their child, and that provoked public outrage. If something provokes something, it triggers it, it causes something to happen, usually something controversial or something violent.
Yeah.
Provoke oftentimes is used if people are fighting. Yeah, John hit Larry, and why did John hit Larry? Well, Larry provoked him. Larry called him a poopy or something, and that made him mad, so he started fighting with him. So he was provoked by being called names.
Yeah, I had a younger brother that would always provoke his older brother. And, they'd end up fighting. And eventually the younger brother would be hurt and crying. And my mom would say, you provoked him. Mark, stop it. So, yeah, this happens a lot. So provoke, remember, you're causing someone to react. Usually you're causing someone to be angry or stirring up trouble. Maybe someone makes a rude comment that provokes a strong reaction from someone else. Here it provoked public outrage. We're talking about all the public, the people out there. Outrage is a strong feeling of anger or maybe shock, usually just great anger. And a lot of people criticized this couple for treating the surrogate mother as nothing more than a tool. Instead of being a human being, they were talking about her as if she were some sort of tool they were using to get what they wanted. Surrogate here, of course, is the adjective form of surrogacy. A surrogate can also be a noun. It's the person who carries the baby for someone else. Who's your surrogate? Or who's the surrogate mother? Those are both appropriate.
Yep, so people criticize them for treating that Russian woman as just a tool for them. They're not being very sensitive to her at all. And actually, they chose her because she's Western, Caucasian, and they wanted to have a kid with mixed blood or something like that, to be biracial or whatever. And this incident highlights the complexity surrounding surrogacy practices worldwide. So basically, this serves as an example for us. Taiwan is not the only place that has this controversy. It happens in places all over the world. I think we're going to talk about something that happened in India later on.
Yeah, and what France and Germany think about it. It's interesting. So surrogacy involves a woman. This is the definition: agreeing to carry and deliver a baby for another person or a couple. Supporters argue that it represents reproductive autonomy. Reproductive just means reproducing one of your kind. If you're a human, you're going to reproduce a human and not something like a frog or a cow. And autonomy means the ability to guide or run your own life, and personal freedom. So these are some of the arguments that the supporters make in support of surrogacy. Now, if you're infertile, it means you're unable to have a child. It could be a man who's infertile. It could be the woman who's infertile, but you're not able to have children. They used to call them sterile. S-T-E-R-I-L-E, sterile, barren. That's kind of an old-fashioned way to say it too. Or maybe they're just childless. Sometimes couples choose not to have children, which is sad for me because I think kids are the best. But we have infertile individuals and couples, even single people. I have a friend in the States who she didn't find anyone she wanted to marry, and she wanted a baby. So she went a different route. She had the baby herself, so she didn't need a surrogate. A surrogate can only be female, of course, because the surrogate has that baby in her womb and then delivers the baby. Of course, the man can't do that.
Right. If you're a woman, of course, and you want to have your own baby, it's pretty easy to do. But if you're a man, you need to find a woman to do it for you. Yeah. And that's what this gay couple had to do. And again, this is going on all over the world, especially with infertile couples or single people or same-sex partners, of course, homosexuals. And it offers these people a precious chance to have biological children they otherwise couldn't. Now, biological here means having to do with biology or living things. I can't imagine what other kinds of babies there are, what kind of other children there are. You mean robots or something?
I don't know. It's kind of creepy. Biological children, your own children. I think they use this phrase when we're talking about maybe a couple that has adopted a child, and they might say, oh, this little boy's not my biological child. That's all they mean, is that someone else is responsible for the DNA in that kid. But if you raise and love a child, you are their parents regardless. So some also view commercial surrogacy as a win-win situation. Commercial here means there's some sort of trade going on, or either money is exchanged or some sort of product that is valuable. Maybe you don't exchange money. Maybe you exchange a piece of land, and you give that surrogate mother a piece of land in exchange for 9 months and the use of her body to have a baby. So commercial, again, just means there's some sort of exchange going on. It's not something that's done freely, you can say.
And yes, we're describing it as a win-win situation. Everybody benefits from the situation. The couple get to have a child, and the woman makes some money in the process, and she's done this independently. She's volunteered for this. Yes, women are financially compensated for voluntary participation and are covered by clear legal protections. Yes, indeed, you do need to do this legally. And you need to sign contracts and things like that and make sure everything's on the up and up, everything's really clear. And yes, they are compensated, they are paid for their services. And yes, indeed, if there's any other problems later, if the woman says, well, actually, I think I'd rather have that child myself. Well, you already signed this document, so you're obligated. If you have the documents already signed, there won't be any problems.
What gets tricky, though, is if the woman is using her own egg. That gets kind of tricky because that baby is half hers. But if you sign a contract, you're going to lose in court if you try to decide later on, oh, I want that baby, even though you said you agreed that you would give it to another couple once you had it. So it gets kind of complicated. There's a lot of ethical concerns with this. We're going to talk more about this, guys, but first we're going to take a quick break and just listen to something nice, maybe music, I don't know.
Welcome back, everybody. We're going to continue talking about surrogacy. It's kind of controversial, and of course, people have been discussing this in Taiwan recently because a gay couple from Taiwan went to the U.S. to try to find a Russian woman, a tall Russian woman, to have their baby for them. And of course, because of this, lots of people have been talking about this. And it's not just happening here in Taiwan, but of course it happens all over the world. It is kind of controversial.
For me, it's a matter of the number of children that don't have a family, who just need to be adopted. That's the first avenue I would choose. I wouldn't go surrogacy. I'd want to, go out there and save a child that doesn't have anyone to love them and raise them. But a lot of people don't want somebody else's child. I understand that adoption's not that popular in Taiwan, but it's a shame because a lot of these kids who aren't wanted or who have been abandoned, maybe their parents have been killed and they're in an orphanage, those kids need some help. But a lot of people just want their own biological children.
I'm also concerned that this child may become bullied later on because they're biracial and they may be growing up in Taiwan and they have men as their parents. So I'm afraid that maybe they might be bullied. Who knows? Maybe people here can accept something like that. But that's what I'm more concerned about, whether the child will be bullied as he or she grows up.
Your child's biracial. Is she
indeed.
bullied?
Not really. No, as far
okay.
as I know, she wasn't, but it could happen. I guess people in Taiwan are pretty cool about that. But
I think
bullying,
they're used to it by now.
Yeah, of course, it's not rare.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we're talking about this gay couple trying to adopt a child. Well, they're not adopting. They're actually having a surrogate mother have the baby for them. And we talked about some of the pros and cons of this situation. On the surface, it looks like a win-win situation. The woman will get some money for this. And of course, if it's legal, everybody will be protected and nobody will get their feelings hurt. Nobody will lose money. It will be a clear-cut deal.
Now let's move to the third paragraph, guys. It says, however, critics, people who are opposed to this idea of surrogacy, they raise significant concerns about exploitation. Exploitation is the unfair use of someone else for personal gain. You're taking advantage of someone. You're exploiting them. You're using them. Those are the ways we talk about this. So they feared the surrogates were victims of exploitation. We're going to find out how that might happen.
Okay, the next sentence here says, the substantial costs of surrogacy typically limit access to wealthy clients. So basically that means that only really rich people can afford this.
It's really expensive.
Poor people can't, so we're hoping that a couple from Taiwan is actually pretty rich. They have enough money to afford to do this. And yes, indeed, it will limit it only to wealthy clients. And then it transfers health risks associated with pregnancy to economically vulnerable women. Okay, so these are Russian women. And of course, as you know, Russia is not really as rich as the other countries in Europe, and they're fighting a war with Ukraine now. So a lot of these women are probably poor, and they might be refugees or whatever. So this situation may be taking advantage of them. We're describing them as being economically vulnerable. They're quite poor, and they're quite vulnerable. They could be easily hurt.
Yeah, it says, furthermore, with in vitro fertilization success rates hovering around just 17%, surrogates are left to shoulder the considerable risks of miscarriage and other medical complications. In vitro fertilization, that's when a doctor takes someone's sperm and implants it into an egg, and then that egg that is fertilized is then implanted in the woman. So it's a long process, and it's very, very uncomfortable. I had a friend who went through this. It was horrible. They weren't doing surrogacy, but they were having problems getting pregnant. And so her husband and she decided to go through in vitro fertilization. So again, it's the medical process where an egg is fertilized first outside the body, and then the doctor places it into the woman's womb. But the success rate is very low. 17% is really, really low. So they have to keep trying, and it's very uncomfortable and quite expensive. Back when we were talking, it was at least $10,000 per try. So it was a lot of money.
Well, they might be able to increase their chances or save some money by just having one of the men in the couple have sex with the woman and get her pregnant that way. But it kind of depends on how they feel about that. If they're gay men, maybe they feel uncomfortable.
That's unethical and immoral.
Yeah, that's probably something that raises other questions as well. But I'm sure a lot of you were thinking of that. And yes, indeed, it hovers around 17%. It's 17, 18, or 16. It kind of goes there up and down depending on where it is or what time it is, what year it is, etc. And yes, indeed, if the woman gets pregnant, she has to shoulder the considerable risks of miscarriage. So it's going to be all on her. She has to bear the responsibility of miscarriage, which means the baby just comes out. It's not viable. It does not survive. And so that can, of course, could be very, disheartening to the woman. It could be quite dangerous to her life. And there may be other medical complications as well. Pregnancy is not a simple thing. It involves lots of factors.
I wanted to mention with hover, which means to stay in the air in one place or to stay close without moving away. That's the literal definition. Figuratively, it just means, as Tom said, it's around 16. It may be 16 at one point and then goes to 17 and back. You might have someone, have you ever had this happen? You're at your computer and you're looking at your screen and someone is behind you, leaning over you, which means you could say, don't hover, get away. You're just kind of staying close to somebody without moving away. I wanted to mention miscarriage doesn't necessarily mean that the baby comes out of the mother. Sometimes the baby dies within the womb, and the doctor has to go in and do a procedure which cleans that dead baby out of her. That is not abortion. Some people call that abortion. It is not. That's a medical procedure where sometimes your body just won't emit that dead baby once it dies. So it's very hard, and there are a lot of medical complications in pregnancy, more even now because that COVID shot affecting a lot of women's reproductive processes.
Indeed, and of course we've got lots of complications as well that they might have to experience. Let's go to India now. India, once a popular surrogacy destination, banned commercial surrogacy in 2021, following reports of surrogate mothers dying under exploitative conditions. Now, India, as you know, has a lot of beautiful women, and a lot of people think, hey, if I have a baby with an Indian woman, the kid would be quite attractive, would be quite cool. So it was a popular destination for people wanting to find a surrogate mother, but there were some problems in India, and they banned it because these women were being exploited. To exploit just means to use somebody for your own gain. Usually they suffer because of that. And here the word exploitative.
No, exploitative.
Exploitative. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I was going to say that this word is not really used all that often.
No, because it's kind of hard to say.
Yeah, exploitative?
Really?
Is that what you said?
Exploitative, yeah.
Okay, exploitative is what I was guessing. But,
I grew up saying exploitative, and I looked it up today. There is no exploitative in the dictionary.
Oh, okay.
Exploitative.
Fair enough, but to exploit is used more commonly.
Yes.
And we could just say that they were exploited, they were used, and they suffered because of that. So the government rightly banned the practice way back in 2021.
Wow. So we can see that at least they're paying attention to some people being hurt or exploited using this particular program of surrogacy. Beyond concerns about bodily autonomy, bodily just means having to do with the body and freedom to make decisions about your own body. That's very important in society. The opponents argue that treating childbearing as a business raises ethical questions about turning women's bodies and children into commodities or products that you buy and sell. That's already happening out there, guys, unfortunately. But it should be illegal, and this is kind of, you're kind of straddling or hovering over this line between what's right and what's wrong. Are we really turning women's bodies and the babies that they have into products people can buy and sell? Yes.
And mix and match the genes and things like that. Is that the right thing to do, or should we let nature run its course?
Yeah.
And yes, we're talking about bodily autonomy. Bodily has to do with your body, like your pee and your poop. That's bodily waste, for example.
Bodily functions.
Exactly. How you work, how you move your muscles and things like that. But this is bodily autonomy, controlling your own body and not letting somebody else control you or exploit you. And we have opponents here who are against this, and they feel that childbearing is being treated as a business. And then we have these ethical questions, whether it's right or wrong. Now, here in the next paragraph, it says, different nations have approached surrogacy from varied perspectives. Okay, so different countries have different views on this particular situation or on this particular topic. Let's go to France and Germany, for example. They prohibit the practice, deeming it harmful to women's dignity. So the French and the Germans don't allow this to take place because they deem it harmful to the dignity of women. If you deem something, you consider it a certain way, you say it's that way, you regard it that way, and so they think that it's basically harmful to the dignity or respect of women.
Yeah, a lot of people deem Taiwan's food to be one of the tastiest in the world, so they consider it that way, they judge it to be that way, to deem. We actually use that quite a bit, but probably more in more formal English or written English, but you'll hear people say it. In contrast, now that's France and Germany, they say no to surrogacy. The UK and the US, by that, in the same way, they permit only altruistic surrogacy. Altruistic means you're doing something to help others without expecting any sort of reward, or you don't have any expectation of getting something back. I've heard of some mothers who are a surrogate for daughters who are having trouble having a baby. If the mothers aren't too old, they would have had to have had their daughter pretty young, and their daughter had to be married pretty young to do this. But yeah, family members who step up and say, my cousin can't get pregnant. It's hard for her, so I will be a surrogate mother. That's real love.
Okay, so that sounds rather nice. It's altruistic. They're, treating people, they're considering people to be more important than themselves. So maybe, got friends or somebody. My friend Lisa can't get pregnant. I'll go ahead and have the baby for her.
Yeah, that happens.
Whatever. So that's between friends or family members. So that's okay in the UK and the US, as you said. And yes, they consider it a gift between women, or they deem it a gift between women.
Right.
And meanwhile, let's go to Russia and Ukraine and also certain U.S. states. They allow commercial surrogacy, viewing it as an expression of female independence. So that's how they feel about it in Russia, in Ukraine, and some U.S. states. Of course, they have different laws in different U.S. states like California, New York, Georgia, Florida, or whatever. They all have different laws regarding this. And yes, they consider it as an expression of the independence of women. You guys can do whatever you want with your bodies. It's up to you. It's a legal contract.
I understand that they have these laws, but I always want to say, hey, that baby had no choice in the matter. So I don't think it's just female independence. I think that we're dealing with human beings, and the child is just as important as that mother. So yeah, I think it's something to consider. Such conflicting stances. A stance is your viewpoint, your opinion about something. Here's my stance. My stance is in opposition to someone else's. Well, these are conflicting stances, of course. Everyone has an opinion, and it makes surrogacy a highly controversial issue. A lot of people debating That's why when we first started the article, we said that this was a controversy that erupted, that kind of exploded across Taiwan. I think it's something that's a really good subject to debate, to hear other people's opinions about it. I think it's really good to listen to everyone's thoughts and feelings. It's a very sensitive topic, I think you could say.
And it requires careful consideration across cultural, legal, and moral dimensions. A dimension is just a realm or an area of consideration, a feature of something. So yes, you can consider it in terms of culture. Is it acceptable to do in a certain culture? Maybe they're more conservative. Maybe they're more liberal. Or legal. Okay, can these women be protected? Can these contracts be signed? And of course, we've got ethics as well, which is similar to moral in reasoning. And yes, these are all the dimensions or considerations for surrogacy. And I'm sure here in Taiwan, this topic was discussed quite a bit in talk shows on TV and on the internet. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with this particular situation. And I'm wondering if this couple in Taiwan actually did manage to get a child from that Russian woman. Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. And that's the end of our unit for today. So thank you for joining us. And please join us again next time for another edition of our program. And don't forget to check out our extra content on YouTube and Facebook. From all of us here at English Digest, I'm Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.